I want to set you guys up with a scenario here, okay? Imagine you're a teenage boy, okay? And imagine like you have like, maybe a brother or sister, some siblings, right? And like your mom asks you, hey, your siblings are at like a friend or a cousin's house or something like that. It's time for them to come home. Can you go over to their house and pick them up, right? Can you go over to their friend's house or their cousin's house and go pick them up, right? And she gives you the address and says, this is where you can find them. Go pick them up. And you make a mistake and you go to the wrong house. Maybe it's a case of like you plug the address into the GPS, and you know how like GPS will automatically auto suggest addresses to you as you're typing them in. Maybe an address pops up that looks similar and you click on the wrong one and you end up at the wrong house. Now this seems like a scenario that should be a pretty simple scenario to resolve, right? You show up to the house, you knock on the door, hey, I'm here to pick up, my siblings. And it's like, I think you have the wrong house. Maybe amidst the confusion, you're like, well, this is the address like my mom gave me. So like, I'm a little bit confused. I don't, is this really the wrong address? I'm not really sure. So there's a little bit of confusion, but for the most part, the scenario there would essentially end up like you find out you're at the wrong house, maybe call mom to get the correct address, and then you end up at the correct house and no harm done. It's a harmless mistake, right? But unfortunately for one young teenage boy, that's not how it played out. Because in the case of this young teenage boy, he went to the wrong house and damn near lost his life, chat. He damn near lost his life because he went to the wrong address, to the wrong house to pick up his sisters. Now, I don't understand how you could have a situation go from harmless mistake to a kid has been shot. But that's what we're talking about here. So if you're not exactly sure what I'm talking about, let me refer you to this video that we're going to look at on CNN. And this video is teen shot after going to wrong home to pick up his brothers. That's the situation that we're dealing with here, Chad. So without further ado, let's go ahead and let's take a look at this and let's find out what the hell went wrong to result in a harmless mistake turning into an innocent kid getting shot. Here we go.
Calls for justice across the country after a Kansas City teen went to the wrong home to pick up his younger brothers, and the homeowner shot him. 16-year-old Ralph Yarl is recovering in the hospital in stable condition. His family describes him as a typical high schooler who...
Dude, it's just a 16-year-old boy, little 16-year-old black kid looking to pick up his brothers from a house that he thought they were at. He got the wrong address somehow. There was a mix-up. And he gets shot. Again, like, I don't understand how this escalation happens, right? This should have been a simple, you're at the wrong house, sorry, oh, my mistake. I guess I showed up at the wrong address. And then you correct it, and then you move on, right? How do we get from harmless mistake to shooting a kid? That's what I'm wondering.
Who loves to play the bass clarinet. He has been looking forward to starting college and majoring in chemical engineering. Police say Yarl's family say that he was given the address 115th Terrace, but he mistakenly went to a home at 115th Street. And
dude, like, look at how easy of a mistake that was. These two streets are like 2 blocks from each other. That is a simple mistake that anyone can make. And like I said, the kid probably fired up his phone and plugged it into the GPS, like, hey, here's, the address that I'm given. And as he started typing, 115th Terrace popped up instead of street, right? Or whatever direction it was in terms of getting the wrong address. That is a very, very easy mistake to make. A very, very easy mistake to make. So how does that turn into, oh, I came to the wrong house and now I've been shot? I genuinely don't get it.
Instead, the shooter has been released, and there is sparking protest nationwide right now.
That's the other thing, too. The shooter shot this innocent kid, and he was released? Why? I don't get why. I see Megan in the chat saying, is this racism? I'll say this. I don't know if this was racism or not. But what I will say is, looking at this situation, a white homeowner shoots a black kid for basically no reason. Like, I can understand how people would come to that conclusion, right? I can understand how people would come to the conclusion that race might be a motivator for this. I don't know, though. I guess we'll find out.
now and outrage nationwide. CNN's Camilla Bernal live for us in Los Angeles with more on this. Good morning to you, Camilla. What is the status on this investigation?
Deathwater in chat says, was it the homeowner? Yes. Basically, the kid walked up to the door and knocked on the door looking for his siblings, and instead he got shot by, yes, the homeowner, who was a white man.
Good morning, Don. Authorities say more is needed to go forward, and they need a statement from Ralph Yarl. He is doing well. He's in the hospital. He's recovering. But the family says that this is a long...
Like, thank God this kid is recovering, because my understanding is one of those shots was in the head. Like, this had the potential to, like, result in loss of life. A harmless mistake. Just imagine a harmless mistake getting you killed. It's unreal.
Road, especially when it comes to his mental and his emotional health. This is a teenager that is being described as friendly and well-mannered. He loves music, and the family says plays multiple instruments, always had one in hand. He was dreaming about graduating and going to West Africa. All of this, of course, is going to be a lot more difficult now because he went to 115th Street instead of Terrace. So
that was the way it was. He was supposed to go to 115th Terrace and instead went to 115th Street. This simple, harmless mistake got this kid shot, Chad. Like, I can't emphasize how ridiculous that is anymore. They made a simple mistake that, like, think about this, like, how many times have you been dialing somebody's number and you dialed the wrong number? How does that, like, interaction happen? Hey, I'm looking for so-and-so. Oh, I think you have the wrong number. I'm sorry. Oh, my apologies. You hang up the phone and then you figure out where you made the mistake and then you move on. Going to the wrong house should be very similar. Hey, I'm here looking for my brothers. Oh, I think you have the wrong house. We don't have anybody like that here. Okay, I'm sorry. Moving on, right? This should never be a situation where a gun is involved at all, let alone resulting in the kid being shot.
Just a block away from his brothers when he was shot.
The Kansas City community protesting on Sunday after 16-year-old Ralph Yarl was shot as he was trying to pick up his siblings last week. Police say Yarl accidentally went to the wrong address where he was shot and seriously wounded by the homeowner. Officers arrived at the
scene. Like, how does that I'm trying to envision a scenario in my head where it gets to that point. Where, again, we have a kid who just went to the wrong address, right? I'm trying to understand and I'm trying to envision a scenario in my head where it gets from you made a mistake and you went to the wrong house to now you're being shot, all right? Was there some kind of scuffle between the two of them? Did the homeowner just come out, like, hostile from the start? Like, I don't know. There's not a single scenario in my head that I could insert into my brain, like a scenario I can play out in my mind that would say, oh, yeah, that makes sense that a kid got shot in this case. Like, nothing comes to mind where this scenario makes sense.
Seen after a neighbor called 911.
Angel Singer in the chat said, thank God he survived. That poor kid. Exactly. Like, this could have gone so much worse than it did.
And took the homeowner immediately into custody.
Our heart goes out to the juvenile victim, and more than anything, to make sure that this child and this child's family knows that there are people working hard, a number of people working hard, to make sure there is justice for this person.
The homeowner, who has not been identified, was released after 24 hours pending further investigation.
I did see Ruin Leon in the chat saying they were released, like, based on, like, the laws of the state or whatever. But I don't know, like, to me, this seems like pretty cut and dry. Like, he shot someone who was unarmed and innocent. Like, he had no justification whatsoever to, like, shoot this person. So, like, what grounds would they have to release him? It doesn't make sense to me. I understand that laws can be really tricky and weird sometimes, but, like, I don't understand a scenario where somebody innocent gets shot and then you get released. I'm not a lawyer, obviously, so I don't understand. And I do see Leon saying in the chat that they've been rearrested and charged. We'll get to that in a little bit, but thank you for sharing that.
The police department says they're waiting to obtain a formal statement from the victim and further forensic evidence.
I want everyone to know that I'm listening and I understand the concern that we are receiving from the community. The information that we have now, it does not say that it's racially motivated. That's still an active investigation. But as a chief of police,
yeah, like I said, like initially looking into this, because I haven't, there's a few videos we're going to play here, and I haven't watched them all. I've essentially just watched this initial video. Like, I don't know if I should, like, if it should be jumped to the conclusion that this is a racially motivated crime. But again, I can totally understand, based on, like, what I know right now, why people would jump to that conclusion that this was probably racially motivated.
I do recognize the racial components of this case. I do recognize and understand the community's concern.
Jarl's aunt says her nephew loves music and is a section leader in his marching band. She says his goal is to attend Texas A&M University to study chemical engineering. Civil rights attorneys Lee Merritt and Benjamin Crump are representing the victim and his family and demanding swift action, and are calling the shooting horrendous and unjustifiable.
I would agree. Like I said, I've tried to play out multiple scenarios in my head to try and make this situation make sense, and none of them make sense. There is no justification whatsoever where a young man shows up to the wrong house and gets shot, right? There's no justification for that whatsoever. Doesn't matter what the reason was for showing up to the house. In this case, he was there trying to pick up his siblings, right? What if there was a delivery driver, a pizza delivery driver that was delivering pizza to the wrong house? Maybe showed up to the wrong house, right? Maybe somebody ordered like service from a plumber and the plumber showed up to the wrong house. Like, none of these situations would justify the person being shot because they showed up to the wrong house. That is insane.
As a mother of 3 children, this enrages me.
And protesters gathering Sunday outside the home where Jarl was shot, demanding justice.
He is alive. He is healing. Yes. So I just want to tell you thank you for being...
That is honestly a blessing in this situation, because so many times you see situations like this and like it doesn't turn out this way. The person doesn't survive, right? They don't survive what happened to them. So this is like honestly kind of a miracle, especially considering, according to what we're being told, one of the shots was to the head. Like in most cases, like a headshot is like a done deal. So the fact that this kid got shot in the head and survived, holy shit.
Here because my nephew is alive.
And the homeowner was released. State law says you either have to charge someone or release them after 24 hours.
Lady Blue in the chat says, I heard he was forcibly trying to open the door. If you got a source for that, feel free to post it in the chat, because I don't know anything about that. That's the first I'm hearing of that.
And authorities here say they need more evidence. They want to talk to this teenager and they want to continue this investigation. So he was released, and it's part of the reason why.
Poison Well in the chat says, if he can give evidence that he felt he was threatened, then yeah, I think he could have a legal justification for shooting him. But what threat would be posed by a teenage boy showing up to your door by mistake? What threat could possibly be posed in that scenario? I genuinely don't understand it. I really, really don't understand it.
Why people are so upset this morning and why they're asking for justice. Don?
A lot more to unfold in this investigation. Thank you, Camilla Bernal.
Okay, so that's the first video there that we're going to take a look at. The second one here, also from CNN, Missouri officials say there was a racial component to the shooting of Ralph Jarl. So now we're getting confirmation that, yes, this was racially motivated, apparently. So let's go ahead and let's dive into this.
Pike County in Missouri. We just heard from Mr. Thompson that there were 2 counts that were announced against Andrew D.
So this is what Ruin Leon was talking about earlier, how the guy has been rearrested and has been charged. So they're going to talk about the charges here.
In the shooting of 16-year-old Ralph Jarl. The first is a count 1 Class A felony, assault in the first degree, which carries a potential sentence of up to life in prison. And then the second charge, count 2, is armed criminal action. That carries 3 to 15 years in prison. I want to bring back in...
Dude, holy shit. Like, this guy, if this guy gets convicted, and I don't see why he wouldn't be, he's fucked.
Our correspondent Josh Campbell, as well as our legal experts. Josh, to you first. 2 very serious felony charges. What was interesting is also that...
Alice Toy Review in the chat says they do know the homeowner had a door camera. Well, it'll be interesting to see the footage that's on that camera then. to see what happened.
There is an arrest warrant now issued for Andrew D. Lester, but he is not in custody.
Nuclear Winter in the chat says attempted murder, maybe. I have seen some people asking, why was there not a charge of attempted murder? I don't know. Who knows why these prosecutors, often like waive potential charges that seem to make sense in these situations. I don't know, dude. It's so bizarre to me.
That's right, and we expect that would happen in short order. I mean, obviously the police know where he lives. We've seen cases before where between the investigation...
Green Lives Matter in the chat says save the children, ban guns. Okay, I'm going to make something super clear right now. I'm not one of these like anti-gun ownership people, all right? I do think that there needs to be, and I don't have the answers, I do think that there needs to be changes into how easy it is to access weapons by certain types of people, the mentally disturbed and whatnot. I don't know what the answer is. I don't even think there is an easy answer, but I'm not someone who's anti-gun ownership. I don't personally own guns myself, but given the background that I'm from and like the places I've lived in, I've grown up in some very dangerous neighborhoods. I do see the value in gun ownership for like home defense and stuff like that. So I'm not like anti-gun, right? I'm definitely not an anti-gun person, and you won't see me advocating for the banning of firearms anytime soon. Having said that, this situation is just nuts. Like, I genuinely don't understand at any point why this situation would pan out the way it did. Charge the kid that got shot for trespassing? How is that trespassing? He accidentally went to the person's house and got shot. Like, what?
And an actual charge that oftentimes police will have eyes on a location. So we're just waiting to see how long will pass before he is actually in custody. But we did learn a lot of key details there in that press conference, Alex. You mentioned the two very serious charges, but also we were told by the Clay County prosecutor that 2 shots were fired, but this is key, through a glass door. And so presumably this man, 85-year-old Andrew D. Lester, could see Ralph Yarr on the other side of that glass.
So, okay, that would seem to contradict the statement someone shared in the chat that the kid was trying to force their way in. Because if they're looking at the kid through a glass door, then that would seem to indicate that they were behind the safety of the door. Now, granted, it's a glass door, right? But they were behind the door, okay? So that wouldn't seem to indicate that anybody was trying to force their way in or anything like that. This was just a case of, for whatever reason, they saw the kid through the door and they opened fire on them. Which, why? Why?
Door before opening.
Like, okay, I could say this. I can understand, like, if the kid was trying to force their way into the house, then, yeah, I can see why the dude would feel threatened and maybe decide to open fire. But, like, you're behind the door and you're shooting at them through the door? I'm sorry, that just doesn't make sense to me.
Fire. And again, it gets to what you and I were talking about just before that press conference. Under Missouri law, this all comes down.
Megan says, I think if the kid was white, this would have ended differently. I mean, they are saying that they found a racial component to this crime. So, yeah, probably.
To reasonableness. Now, in order to use deadly
force, I wonder what they found that brought them to that conclusion. What if they already have access to the guy's, like, door cam? And, like, he was, like, calling the kid, like, the N-word or something before he, like, opened fire on him. Jesus. Like, obviously we don't know. That's speculation on my part. But, like, they found something that leads them to believe that, yeah, this is a racially motivated crime.
So you have to have two things. You have to have a reasonable belief that the subject of your force poses an imminent threat, and you have to reasonably believe that your deadly force is necessary to stop that threat.
Dad Boy in the chat says, I'm a homeowner myself, tipster. I live near a high school. Teens come to my door from time to time for the same reason, wrong address. I never felt the need to even raise my hand against a kid. Yeah, it doesn't make sense. It really and truly does not make sense.
Threat. And of course, the question here is, it is not illegal to walk up to someone's door, to ring a doorbell, or to knock on a door. The prosecutor just said that there was no indication that Mr. Yarl had crossed what's called the threshold. That is actually...
Yeah, it's not illegal. It's not illegal to knock on a door. Even if you have like one of those like no solicitor signs on your door and a solicitor knocks on your door, as long as they leave when you ask them to leave, a crime has not been committed. Or as long as they don't try to force entry into your home, a crime has not been committed. It is not justification to open fire on someone simply because they ring your doorbell or knock on your door. It's that simple.
Going into the property. And so, this appears to be what has been described by Mr. Ural's family attorney, Ben Crump, that someone who was at this location who was then the subject of unreasonable force, that at least according to prosecutors. It is worth pointing out, I want to note one thing, and our colleagues, the legal experts, can speak more to this, but also under Missouri law, say Mr. Lester says that I felt that this young man was trespassing.
Reese the Frog says, in my opinion, he does not look like an adult to me. He clearly looks like a child. I thought he was younger than his actual age. Shooting kid in the head has no justification. Yeah, he very much looks like a young person to me. He does not look like an adult. I don't get it, dude.
Passing or trying to come into my house to commit some violent act. It's up to the burden's on the state to prove that this wasn't reasonable, but a lot of overwhelming evidence here, particularly.
He in the chat says, I'm pretty sure the lawn and step is public until asked to leave. Not exactly. It's your property and you have a right to dictate what happens on your property. But again, in this situation, like, most people, like, the purpose of, like, their doors, like, you walk up to their door and you knock on their door to, like, if you need to have some kind of interaction with someone. Maybe it's a neighbor and you want to go to your neighbor's house and ask to borrow some sugar or something like that. Or maybe you're someone, like, there's multiple reasons why someone might come to someone's door and it's not illegal. Right? Or it's not an invasion on somebody's, like, property or some shit, right? None of those things are, like, justifications for, like, just open fire. I mean, even if to some degree, if somebody comes to your door aggressive, as long as they're not, like, doing anything to actually harm you, like, let's say you get into an argument with a neighbor and the neighbor comes to your door and knocks on your door to continue the argument. Just because your neighbor shows up to your door, mad at you for whatever reason, it doesn't give you a justification to shoot them, right? It's only when they pose, like, a legitimate threat or try to force entry into your home, that's when you would have, like, the justification, right? I don't know. There's just so many scenarios where someone would show up to your door where the justification is not shoot them, right?
If you have a glass door, someone who could presumably see the young man coming up, not posing a threat, according, at least to prosecutors, very damning evidence and very serious charges.
Yeah, the prosecutor making clear there, Josh, as you said, that Jarl did not cross the threshold before he was shot.
So see, any claims of, like, forced entry, the prosecutor is saying that did not happen. There was no forced entry whatsoever. This was someone who was outside of the home and they were shot by someone who was still behind the door inside their home. Safe as can be.
The prosecutor said was a .32 revolver. Joey, I want to go to you. What do you make of these two charges?
Yeah, I make of it that the prosecutor evaluated it and made an assessment that although it is a stand your ground state, that the evidence established here that the stand your ground would not be applicable. To be clear, I feel and do believe.
Yeah, my understanding of, like, stand your ground is, like, it's only if someone's presenting a threat to you. Or in the case of your home, it's only if somebody is forcing entry into your home, right? Look at the Boogie situation, for example, right? He lives in a castle doctrine state. But Boogie was unjustifying in doing what he did because the person wasn't, like, posing, like, an actual threat to them. They weren't forcing entry into Boogie's home, so he had no justification to pull the trigger, right? I mean, it's the same sort of thing, but in this case, instead of firing into the air, which is, like, reckless endangerment, we have them firing directly at the person who's in front of their home.
That the defendant.
So it's even more severe than with Boogie, obviously.
Will certainly avail himself or attempt to of the stand the ground, but there's a couple important points to be made. Number one, if the prosecutor is moving forward, he in essence is saying that is the prosecutor that the person who shot was not in immediate fear of death or serious bodily injury. That is the conclusion the prosecutor has drawn. Number two, he's concluded that the actions that he took in someone ringing the doorbell and firing shots were not reasonable, were not predicated upon enough evidence.
Of course they weren't reasonable. There's nothing reasonable about escalating kid ringing wrong doorbell, showing up to the wrong house to, oh, you're in the wrong house? Okay, let me shoot you. Like, obviously.
Which would suggest that he was protecting himself and preserving his life. Quick pivot. When you look at the issue of stand your ground is not a license to kill. Stand your ground says that you don't have a duty to...
Sherm Goblin in the chat says, I think everyone is missing the possibility the old man has dementia or Alzheimer's. Doesn't make what he did right, but doesn't make it about race or anything malicious. I don't know what the evidence is that they found to come to the conclusion that it has a racial component. Their words, not mine. But obviously, they found something that seems to indicate that race was a motivator in this crime. So I guess we'll have to wait and see as more information comes out. But at this moment in time, they do have reason to believe that this crime was racially motivated.
To retreat. You don't have to run away, but you cannot just shoot and kill in the event that you don't have enough factual evidence to substantiate you being under attack, that there's a threat. Is that threat reasonable? And so clearly the prosecutor believed that on the facts as he knew them to be, based on an investigation, that was not applicable, justification was not applicable, and these would be the charges.
And
okay, someone in the chat says, the gaming goddess, to be specific, says, allegedly Ralph was staring at his phone while in front of the door texting brother, and Lester, the homeowner, is reported to have shouted through the door, "You don't belong here," before opening fire. Okay, so like he acknowledges that the kid doesn't belong there, which is fine. But again, it's not justification to open fire. And to be clear, I don't think that that's the justification that... I don't think the gaming goddess is trying to give them justification. But yeah, that sounds like a really fucked up scenario. To escalate from letting the kid know, yeah, you're in the wrong place, you don't belong here, to now you're shooting them? Yikes.
Eva Martin, what stands out to you in everything we just learned from the prosecutor?
I think one of the things that stands out to me is that there is a racial component to this case. We've been hearing that from Ralph's family. We've been hearing that from the attorneys representing that family, that they believe that this was racially motivated, that this 85-year-old white man purposely shot at Ralph Yarl without any justification, simply because he was a young African-American boy who was knocking on his door. And I think that's what's so tragic about this case. We've seen these amazing pictures of Ralph, just looks like an innocent kid whose only mistake was knocking on the wrong door. And because of the color of his skin, he's now in a hospital bed fighting for his life. And I think that's the most appalling part of the story for me.
Knocking on the wrong door, trying to pick up his siblings, just happened to be...
Ruin Leon in the chat says that's not a racial component, that's just speculation. And I actually will say I have to agree with that. Like, we don't know for sure what was the motivation from the guy. We can all agree that the shooting of the kid was like way uncalled for. Like, there was no justification for that whatsoever. But when they said that officials said that there was a racial component, I thought that they had some kind of evidence to suggest that, like, this was 100% confirmed to be like a race motivated crime. And we don't have that just yet.
The wrong house. Sergeant Dorsey, when you hear the prosecutor there talking about that racial component, how much do you think that was a factor?
Well, certainly it was a factor, but I mean, I would imagine they didn't think that they could prove that. And so they only want to bring those charges that they believe that they can prove. We undoubtedly believe that, you know, this old white man looked out his window, saw a young black kid, and decided that black skin somehow was an imminent threat. He certainly, while he didn't have a duty to retreat, if he was really fearful, he could have. I mean, he's inside. The so-called imminent threat is outside. And so it's not reasonable to believe that deadly use of force was necessary. And so I'm happy that they brought the charges. I don't have a problem with the police department taking the time that was necessary.
Ruin Leon says everything she says is just pure speculation. Yeah, I'd have to agree. I mean, like, unless they have, like, because again, we do, according to what somebody said in chat, allegedly we do have knowledge that they had a door cam, right? The kind of like doorbell camera that a lot of people put on their house, like Ring cameras and stuff like that. According to like what somebody said in chat, there is knowledge that they possessed one of those cameras. So it would be interesting to see what's on the footage for that camera. Like if the camera footage shows them making some kind of like racially motivated comments or something like that before opening fire, because that would be, I mean, that would confirm that, yes, this is a racially motivated crime. But at this time, like, we don't know. I mean, we can all agree, and I see a lot of people agreeing in chat that, like, what happened is obviously 100% unjustified. I just don't like the idea of jumping to the conclusion that something is racially motivated when we don't have evidence to suggest that that's the case just yet. I get people speculating. I even understand the speculation. White man shoots black kid for no reason. Like, I understand why there are some people who would look at that and say, yeah, this looks like it might be racially motivated. But I don't like the idea of saying like, oh yeah, we definitely think this is racially motivated, but you don't know for sure because you don't have evidence that suggest that for sure. You know what I mean?
Necessary to fortify those charges. We want to get it right, and sometimes you only get one bite at the apple. And so I hope that they put this man in custody real soon before another Black person happens by his house and scares him.
That's right. Andrew D. Lester warrant out for his arrest, but he's still not in custody. Arifa Martin, Cheryl Dorsey, Joey Jackson, and Josh Campbell. We have to leave it there. Thank you very much for breaking that down for us.
Okay, so they don't actually have anything. Okay, at least in regards to that. All right, so we're still waiting on any potential evidence that would show that, like, okay, we can confirm this is like a racially motivated crime. So last thing I want to take a look at here, we have a statement from the aunt of the teen who was shot. Aunt of teen going after the wrong house speaks out. Shot after the going to the wrong house speaks out. Okay, here we go.
We're going to go now to Kansas City, Missouri. That's where an 84-year-old man is now facing serious charges.
So this is the guy right here. This is the guy who's been charged with a crime for this incident.
Just in the shooting of a Black teenager.
The defendant, Andrew D. Lester, is charged with the Class A felony of assault in the first degree. It carries with it a range of punishment of up to life.
Prosecutors say the teen, Ralph...
Damn, so he can get up to life in prison for this shit? Jeez, this guy really fucked up.
Yarrow went to the wrong house to pick up his younger brothers. He accidentally went to the shooter's home on 115th Street instead of 115th Terrace. Now, all Ralph did, according to officials, was ring the doorbell.
Oh my God, Nuclear Winner in the chat says the guy looks like he's having a stroke. Jesus, dude. I mean, you're not wrong. He did kind of look like that. Look at how this kid ended up from this shit. Again, a simple mistake. The kind of mistake that people make every day. Like, you know how many times, like, people have come to, like, my house and they're, like, looking for someone or they're trying to make a delivery to someone and I have to, sorry, you got the wrong address. Like, that sort of thing happens all the fucking time, right? And, like, I would go as far as to say 99.9% of the time that this happens, it doesn't result in somebody getting hurt. This kid was damn near killed over a mistake.
When he was shot twice, once in the head through a glass door. Ralph, thankfully, was released from the hospital and is recovering.
Truly insane in the chat says guns just need to go altogether. Like I said earlier in the stream, maybe you're just getting here. I'm not someone who's like anti-gun ownership. I've grown up in some like rough neighborhoods, so I could definitely see the value in like gun ownership for the purpose of like home defense and stuff like that. I don't personally own a gun myself, but I see the value in that, right? So I'm not the type of person who's going to be coming out and advocating for like, let's ban all the guns and shit like that. I do think there's definitely room for like gun law reform. I think a lot of people would agree that there's room for reform. I don't know what that looks like because I'm not an expert at this stuff, right? But having said that, like, just to be clear, I'm not the type of person who's going to advocate for let's ban all the guns, but I will say that, like, what happened in this situation is, like, extremely insane, and it should have never fucking happened.
At home this morning. This all happened last Thursday. The homeowner was charged yesterday. He was taken into custody the night of the shooting, but was released 2 hours later. So Ralph...
KRDP in the chat says, I have a question, Tipster. Why did the white man shoot the black teen? We don't know his motivation. Obviously, people are speculating. There are some people who think that this was racially motivated. And while I'm not going to jump to that conclusion myself, I can definitely understand why people would jump to that conclusion. I don't know. All I can say is based on the information we know now, there is no justification for it whatsoever. Kid shows up to the wrong address. This guy was behind his door telling the kid, you don't belong here. And instead of just like letting this be chalked up to a mistake and like moving on, somehow the kid ends up getting shot. And it's just like, it's insane. It never should have fucking happened.
Yarl's aunt, Faith Spoonmore, joins us now, and the Yarl family attorney, Lee Merritt. We're so glad to have both of you on. Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. Ms. Spoonmore, I know that, listen, the mom was on this morning. She talked about the injuries that he was shot on the top of his left eye, shot again in the upper right arm, but that he is doing okay.
So he was shot in the eye and the arm. Jesus Christ.
How is he doing? Because he was released from the hospital Monday, correct?
He was released on Saturday.
On Saturday.
Citric 19, kid tries to open the door at the wrong house. What if the kid tried to open the door not knowing he was at the wrong house and it was a mistake? I mean, I suppose I can understand why someone would be a little bit startled from something like that. But again, I feel like it's a harmless mistake. What we're being told is that the kid either knocked on the door or rang the doorbell. This individual still behind the door informed the kid, "You're not supposed to be here." And instead of letting the kid kind of work out, oh shit, I'm at the wrong address, or somehow come to that conclusion, instead they just open fire. So like I don't understand. Like it just doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make any sense.
From the hospital Saturday, yes. He is doing well, he's doing well. Considering everything that he has been through in less than a week, there's a major part of Ralph that died on Thursday.
The Gaming Witch says he got shot in the eye and lived. How it's a miracle he's alive. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So many times someone gets shot in the head, that's a done deal. Like you're done with. So the fact that he survived is literally a miracle. Ruin Leon in the chat says the only thing that flips this story to make the kid look like he deserved it is if he tried to force his way in. That would be the only thing. And as far as we know, based on the limited knowledge we have now, that doesn't seem to have happened. In fact, I'm led to believe that was not the case based on the fact that he was behind a closed door when he opened fire.
And basically right now is just recovery and healing and processing and trying to understand everything that is happening. So
I just want to make sure that I
road.
heard correctly what you said. You said there was a major part of Ralph that died on Saturday. What did you say?
There's a major part of Ralph that died on Thursday.
Yeah.
What Ralph went through, he lost a part of himself that day. A lot have changed since that happened. The way in which he's going to walk through this world is going to be totally different because of what happened.
Exactly. I mean, that's like a really traumatic fucking experience, right? This kid literally almost lost his life. So when you deal with something that traumatic, of course it's going to have some level of effect on the way you think moving forward, on the way you live your life moving forward. This kid's probably going to be walking around looking over his shoulder every time he goes anywhere now after this, because he literally almost got killed over a simple mistake. A simple, harmless mistake almost got this kid killed. What the fuck?
There's a lot of healing that's going to have to happen after that event. And every single day is a challenge. Every hour is a different story. And it's a long road. So right now he's just healing.
A lot of physical healing?
Yes, still has a lot of physical healing.
And a lot of emotional.
A lot of emotional.
Yeah.
Yes.
Talk to me about that.
That is hard to explain, because there's no words that you can describe that with right now. There's a lot to process. It's trying to make sense of something that is senseless, You just can't wrap your head around it. You just cannot wrap your head around it. From being shot for doing absolutely nothing wrong to crying out for help and not being able to get help, to finally getting help, but having to do something to get that help, and then going through surgery to stay alive, coming home.
That was another thing. I had heard that apparently this kid had to bang on multiple neighbors' doors before somebody offered to help him. And even then, apparently when he was when he got help, the person whose door, which understandably, I can understand to some extent, he's going around banging on random doors. I can understand why people would be alarmed. But the person who inevitably helped him apparently told him to lay on the ground and raise his hands, right? So they were basically asking to show that he wasn't a threat and that he passed out while he was laying down, right? So it's crazy. That's one of these things that we see in a lot of these social experiments, right? Where it's hey, somebody's in a state of distress and will you be the one to help them, sort of thing. And there's so many people who are just onlookers. They don't want to get involved, right? It's crazy to me that this kid who had just been shot for no reason, right, had to bang on multiple people's doors before somebody was willing to offer some level of help. Jeez.
And knowing that the person who did this went home and was able to sleep in his bed. And seeing your family have to fight to get the justice and attention that you should have gotten from the beginning. So there's a lot.
Angel Singer in the chat says, gun violence is not like other types of violence. My dad was shot in front of me when I was 9. He survived. I still struggle, and I only saw the shot. This poor kid has a long road ahead of him. Yeah, I can totally understand what you're talking about. Like, Jesus Christ. It's... You really don't realize how traumatic an experience is to someone until you've experienced that situation yourself. Maggots in the chat says, bystander effect is real. Yeah. I mean, you could look at any, like, viral video of something crazy going on, and, like, so many people would rather stand around with their fucking phones recording what's going on instead of intervening and trying to, like, help with the situation. Like, I understand to some degree you might not want to get involved because the situation is, like, really dangerous. That I get. But, like, if it's a situation where, like, somebody's in need of help and you are available there to help them, and instead you're choosing to either not get involved completely or you'd rather film the situation rather than try and help the person, like, something is really wrong with people when that's the way that they choose to, like, address those kind of things. It's so weird.
There's a lot to process.
How do you feel now that the suspect has been arrested and charged?
A little better. But yeah, it's not as simple as turning a page, because yeah, it's just not as simple as turning a page. But it is a little better.
Reese the Frog in the chat says, I was assaulted in the center of busy London. Everyone looked at me getting assaulted, but no one did anything. I'm really sorry that that happened to you. That's extremely unfortunate.
It's a little better. It's a little better that he is hopefully going to get part of.
Chiller in the chat said, if you can help. If you can't, call 911. Recording should be the last thing you do. Yeah, exactly. And to be clear, just so there's no confusion here, there wasn't anyone, as far as I know, involved in recording this particular situation. I was just talking about in general how, like, so many times there will be a situation where somebody's in desperate need for help and, like, bystanders nearby, instead of helping, they're just like, I don't want to get involved. I'm staying out of it. And it's like, it's crazy to me.
Of what he deserves.
Lee, you said when Faith was speaking that he lost his innocence.
Yeah, absolutely. The trauma that he experienced by just knocking on a door can't be undone. And he had to face an ugly reality here in the States, that the color of his skin is often seen as a threat.
Dat boy in the chat says, the whole neighborhood is just crazy for seeing a severely injured kid and going, put your hands up and make sure you're not a threat, tipster. I understand to some degree why they would want to make sure the kid's not a threat, right? I mean, at the end of the day, we have a kid who got shot. You know, you're just in your home minding your own business. You don't know why this kid got shot, right? But it's a kid who got shot, and now he's running around banging on people's doors, right? I can understand having some level of, like, we got to make sure that this situation, like, this person's not a threat. So I get it, right? The only part I find, like, truly shocking is that why did this person have to go to so many people's homes before somebody was willing to provide some level of assistance? Why did so many people just ignore it, right? We had someone who was in need, and instead of, like, at least looking at the situation to try and find out, what can I do to help this person? Instead, it's like, I'm just going to stay in my house, mind my own business, and pretend like I don't know anything's going on. Like, that's fucked up, you know?
In and of itself. The shooter, Andrew Lester, said he looked out of the door, he saw a black boy, and he feared for his life. And that's something that we've heard a lot.
JFA said this happened in the West Coast. This was in Kansas City, Missouri.
In American jurisprudence and police shootings and shootings of young black boys, that their skin in and of itself is a threat.
He said he feared for his size. And listen, there's one study, and there are a number of studies that feared for his life because of his size, right? He said he saw a black man. He thought he was a black man. Obviously, he's only 16 years old. There are studies that show from the American Psychological Association and beyond that found that people see black.
Dragon Knight Dragonborn in the chat says, if you can't help, just call 911 or any emergency, then just sit there and record. It should be a last resort. Yeah, exactly. Like, even if, like, the people in this situation, they were like, I don't know, like, if this person is, like, a threat to me or not, at the very least, like, offer to, like, call 911. I'll call 911 so you can get some kind of assistance, right?
black men and black youth as bigger, stronger, and scarier than white men of the same size. Do you think that factored into this?
Absolutely. In this country, from decades, hundreds of years of conditioning, we've decided that black and criminal is almost synonymous. Black and dangerous is almost synonymous. It's been repeated in Hollywood. It's been repeated in the laws that we created. And we're just getting to a point in this country.
Cora Wade Evil. I hope I'm pronouncing that. I probably butchered the hell out of that. My apologies. The neighbors could have also thought that whoever the shooter was still outside somewhere, so they were too terrified to go out. Yeah, and like I said, in those situations, that's when it's like, okay, just like call the cops then, right? Don't just like stick your head in the sand and pretend like nothing's going on just because you don't want to get involved. Call the cops at that point, right? Do something.
We were trying to break that down. We were trying to address the reality of race and racism. But we see these old vestiges pop their head on a daily basis.
Faith, what do you think of that? He said he was scared because of Ralph's size.
I don't understand how.
Wait, so the suspect said he was scared because of the kid's size? Is the size of an individual justification for shooting them now? Like, I'm sorry, but if Shaquille O'Neal shows up at my front door, my first thought isn't to, like, open fucking fire. What? So because he was big, that's so silly.
I really don't understand how you can possibly see someone. I doubt Ralph is even 170 pounds. Ralph is not even 6 feet. Like, Ralph, when you see Ralph in all of the pictures that you have seen on social media and everywhere else, I don't see how you see fear. I don't know how you can see fear when you look at that kid.
Bork88 in the chat says, if Shaq showed up to my house, I'd let him in. True. Maybe get a few autographs. Maybe just like shoot the shit. Like, that would be awesome, honestly.
There's no way you can see fear when you look at that kid. If you really look at him and not just the color of his skin, there is no way you can see fear.
Your nephew didn't have his cell phone with him. He wasn't on GPS. He was following his mom's directions. When you look at how close these two addresses are and how similar the names are, people will say it's a case of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. But that does not warrant getting shot, Faith.
Of course.
No, it does not. And then wrong place at the wrong
Bro, it's literally like a block or two away from each other. Like, holy shit.
time.
It's crazy to me that the two addresses are that close to each other.
Okay. How many times have you gotten a package at your house that is not yours? You know?
Right.
Like, how many times have someone ring your doorbell looking for someone else? Should those people be shot? No.
No, of course not.
No, it should not happen. If you don't want to open your door, don't open your door. You can close your blinds. You can turn the lights off. But this individual chose to open his door. He was not in any danger because there was a glass door between him and my nephew. He shot him through the glass door.
Yeah.
He was perfect.
Yeah, the door was closed and he was behind the door. There was no justification whatsoever. Like I said, even if somebody came to his house that was like angry with him, let's say he pissed off like the neighbor across the street or some shit for some reason, and the neighbor came to his door angry. If the neighbor's just on your front porch angry, that's still not justification to shoot. It's not until he becomes like a legitimate threat that it's like, okay, now you can shoot. Or he's trying to force his way into your home. Now you can shoot to defend yourself, right? That's not what happened here. The kid was on one side of the door. The man was on the other side of the door, and the door was closed, and he shot him through the door.
Lee, I want to talk to you about that because according to Ralph's statement, he says that he did not pull on the door, that Lester said, don't come around here. Is that a valid defense given Missouri stand your ground law?
No, the Missouri stand.
So some people in the chat were asking if the kid had tried to open the door. They're saying that the door was not, there was no attempt to open the door.
Ground law, or even the Castle Doctrine, which was probably a little more appropriate given where the shooting took place, don't apply to this case for one key reason. Those are self-defense statutes. Those are saying that you have the right to protect yourself.
Miss Hayes in the chat says supposedly he was trying to open the door. They just confirmed that that was not the case.
Against force exerted against you. The stand your ground law says you don't have to retreat. The Castle Doctrine says you don't have to retreat back into your home. But once you're confronted with force, you can respond with equal or even greater force. He was never confronted with force. Ralph never even tried the door handle. He rang the doorbell and he waited, and he was open. The door opened, and he was confronted with a man with a gun and hostility. And the law simply doesn't protect him under these circumstances.
Yeah, so there was like no forced entry whatsoever, not even an attempt to force entry. If you're just ringing a doorbell, that's not under any circumstances whatsoever justification to open fire.
I'm wondering, Faith, because I just want to go back to what we talked about in the beginning. You said there's going to be a lot of physical healing. I don't want to get too specific and be inappropriate here.
Keenan in the chat says, when you walk up to a house you've never been to before, do you knock first or just walk in? Yeah, exactly. I mean, this kid has not been to this house. Like, we know for a fact he's never been to this house because his mom had to give him the address on how to get there. Like, if he had been to this house before, he'd already know how to get there, right? So his mom had to give him the address. And obviously, he mixed up the address with another similar address. But, like, that's how infrequent he goes to this house. He didn't even know how to get there. He needed the address to find out how to get there.
But are you saying to us that Ralph is not going to be the same person that he was before? Is that your concern? Is that what doctors are saying to you?
In regards to physically, of course, there will definitely be changes. Like, he was shot in his arm. There's going to be scar tissues. There's going to be a lot of things. He's going to forever have a scar on his head that's going to remind him that I was shot because of the color of my skin. Every time he looks in the mirror, he is going to have that reminder every single time. Yes, Ralph is mobile. Ralph is up. He's able to walk. However, if we just judge based on physical appearance to decide if someone is injured or if someone is hurt, that is part of the problem.
What do you
because
want?
A lot of the pain that we deal with is...
Ms. Hayes in the chat says this is only half of the story. I'm just saying others have said otherwise. Well, if you'd like to inform me who those others are, I'll definitely take a look at it. But simply saying that others have said otherwise in the chat doesn't do any good now, does it? If you'd like to tell me where I could find information that says otherwise, I'll look it up. But if you're just going to tell me others have said otherwise, that doesn't do us any good. So either you're going to give me where I could find that information, or you're just going to keep going on and on in the chat about it, and we're not going to actually find that information. So, ball's in your court.
Internal, emotional, mental, and that's the worst one to heal.
Where do you want to come?
Rulian in the chat says this case hinges on three things: the victim story, the shooter story, and the potential camera footage. Yeah, I'm really interested to see if there actually is a doorbell camera on this person's house and what footage there is there. Obviously, that'll probably be released at some point. I'll definitely be interested in taking a look at that when that comes out.
Out of this.
I want justice to look the same across the board. That's what I want. I want justice to look the same. I don't want sympathy. I don't want pity. I don't want the age to be a factor, because Ralph's age should have been a factor. Ralph's life should be a factor. I don't care that he is in his 80s. No, I don't. I want equality. And it should look the same all across the board.
Faith Spoonmore, Lee Merritt, thank you both. Please keep us updated.
Thank you for having us. We'll be here.
Okay, so that does it for the interview there. Overall, like, this situation, like, is just, like, there was no justification for this kid to get shot whatsoever. No matter how you slice it, this kid should not have been shot for simply ringing the doorbell of the wrong house. I hope justice is served in this case. I'm really interested to see if they do actually find any evidence of this being a racially motivated crime. I'm also interested to see, like, what justification the defense tries to use for the actions that took place. Overall, this is a story that's not over yet, and I'm going to try my best to keep on top of this so we can find, like, updates as this story progresses. But, like, dude, a kid got shot for no reason whatsoever, and that never, ever should have fucking happened.